Welcome to TCP episode 220. And it's team previews time. We're finally there. We're getting to the stage now where we're actually going to address where our teams are for the 2022 season. And we're going to start things out with the San Francisco Shock for this week. If you're wondering why this episode is going to be a shorter one, you probably looked at the timestamps, you probably looked at the time below and be like, what? Something like this is way less than 5 hours. What's going on? We did do a gigantic 4-hour episode last time. So, this one's going to be only 1/10 as long, maybe. Who knows? We're going to be doing more team previews as we go through different episodes. We also have special guest Reinforce coming on for a very special episode we're going to be doing a little bit later on in the coming week as well, which I won't spoil too much, but it'll be really fun. So look out for that. But for now, guys, let's start this episode, a very brief one, as we kind of whet your appetite for something coming up greater as the weeks come by. Episode 220 brought to you by Battlecrab, Refined Bean, Bronzebot Boohow, Chare, Prophet Picasso, Chris R34444, Casher67, Lolshin, Porkchop Sammy, Rexane, Sir Gerthalop, Volamel Smooth Nuts, and Your Misery. The Shock. And also, Super on the Shock. So before we talk about too much in the team, we will talk about the team, but they've made a very big change this week, coming through from huge news that Shock have announced that Super is retired. So it is very unfortunate. It's very sad news with the biggest face of the league, our mascot for the league, the most well-known player, huge streamer, big personality, really accomplished, easily one of the GOAT candidates, 2 titles back-to-back. Many regard as one of, if not the best tank player, certainly on his specific heroes like Ryan. He hangs up the mice and keyboard today professionally, and he will be stepping into, leaning into his content creation stuff, doing streaming, and no longer playing professionally for the Shock.
Yeah, I think I speak for most of the community and maybe for some of us. Sad to see him go. I think he has a lot going for him, like you said, in his streaming career and maybe even outside of that. I don't think he's going very far, right? I think Overwatch 2 is going to be a thrust for the IP back into the pop culture zeitgeist, and I don't think that he's going to be too far away from that. This feels like a retirement for him, not necessarily reflecting on the state of the game or anything, or his love for the game, but just his love or desire to put in the hours, put in the grind. Yeah, there are other things for him just from like reading his public posts and whatnot that are a little bit more important, and he just can't put in the time anymore. And there's no harm, no foul. You're looking at a player who is literally seen from the bottom of bird noises. Not to say that they were at the bottom, but the amateur scene, and is a 2-time world champion, and like AVRL said, is lauded as one of the great main tanks. What a career to look back on. What else could you do, right? The 3-peat maybe, but let's face it, you're doing a disservice to your team if you stay and give it a half-hearted attempt. So wish him nothing but the best, and I'm sure he will be successful.
Yeah.
Yiska?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on a keynote there, that I don't think this is a canary in a coal mine moment, guys. Like, this is just a guy being in a very different situation in his life. A lot has, like, literally basically every part of this guy's adult life has changed, right? Like, moved in, I think, with his girlfriend, the group that he won 2 leagues with, only that one guy, and the head coach is still there. Like, the game he's playing has changed. He doesn't have his companion in crime in terms of his co-main tank, where he splits duties with. Now he would have to had picked up the entire thing. Honestly, that was always a question mark for me, if that it was something that he would be up to, because famously, like, he split time with Smurf, didn't even have to cover the Winston. Like, now he has to cover the Winston and every other off tank, because like Joy is also gone. So, like, that was always going to be a big question mark for me. Not saying that someone as flexible as Super wouldn't have been up to that challenge, but, like, there's also a good reason for him to, like, right now say, okay, this is not what what I want to do with my life. Financial security probably there with his streaming career for sure. And also, you gotta say, it's always already very commendable that this guy was like capable of even playing that long, despite having that streaming career. Because if we look outside, Overwatch at this point has produced some of the biggest variety streamers on the planet, and like the money's just better. Let's be honest. Like the projection of him, he's like in with the guys from the variety stream. I'm not sure if he has potential like SQC. Of course, like probably will slot somewhere below that because that guy's an outlier. But like all things considered, like the draw of like having money that isn't as, it is a grind. Of course, streaming is just a different mode, if we're being honest, right? Like this game is about to become even more intense with like the new work structure that is going to be required of Overwatch League professionals with Overwatch 2. So, I mean, all of this considered, it makes perfect sense. I actually, like, before last season, there was a preseason press conference. I think that clip should be on our GG Recon
I'm pretty sure it is.
YouTube channel. Basically, like, I asked him, like, did you think about hanging up the mouse? Because like if you go back to back, like you're now the most accomplished person in your profession there. Would have been a good example. No, he wanted to go for another year, wanted to have fun with it, decided again for that, probably talked to a bunch of people that are very experienced at his organization, his wider organization with NRG, like Scump, and like just decided like being competitive for a while is actually what I want to do. Now, if you now find out that your heart is no longer in it, all fair in the in game of love, you know, like you only can
fair in love and war.
Do this, and playing an esport is both, if we're being honest. It is about loving the game, and it's about war in the competition against others. And if you're not, if you're so much as only 95% in, you're not fulfilling the position that someone like Super was in, one of the most accomplished franchises of all time, or the most accomplished franchise of all time, in the leadership captain position, now with a lot of responsibilities also in his main role. Like, if that was no longer going to be possible at 100% devotion, it's the best move to get out of there and leave that spot open for someone else that is hungry, right? So yeah, like...
And he was very vocal about the fact that, you know, he if you watch the stream, he felt like he was letting his team down. The rookies looked up to him, and that he didn't want to be someone holding them back as well. So the conflict is, you know, on one hand, if you leave, you kind of do let people down because now your team has to find a replacement immediately. There's not a lot of time left before the league kicks off. But on the other hand, if you stick around and you're not committed, you're letting them down in the long term, where you're just this uncommitted player who's not giving his best, and that is going to lead to potentially poor results and just, you know, a bad look for everyone else and also the Sharks. So I think it's the most respectable thing that he could have done if he felt like he no longer had the motivation, or he no longer had the determination and the will to see through another full season, is to vacate that spot for somebody else, or, you know, and hang it up and just retire on a high note, and allow the Shock to move on. I think it's a super commendable thing that, you know, Super did, and very difficult decision, because I did watch that stream, and he was heartfelt the entire way through, in tears at various points as well, because it's important to him. And, you know, he was very adamant about the fact that it's like, I care a lot about this, which is why I had to leave.
Yep.
You know, so it's, again, to echo some of the other thoughts, it's like, it's definitely not a case where, oh, he just played Overwatch 2, didn't like it. And I have a theory that even if so a couple things is, if we played Overwatch 1 this year and played 6v6, he'd probably still go, because he's ready to retire. He feels like it's the right time to retire. And beyond that as well, even if in his mind, like if you have a scale in your mind about like how good Overwatch 2 in your mind is, even if that scale was at 10 out of 10 for someone like Super, I'm not convinced that he would stay, because again, there's a difference between liking or disliking the game and having a willingness to compete.
Yep.
Because competing as a professional in, especially in a game like Overwatch, requires so much time and dedication and so much effort, so much sacrifice, personal sacrifice in other areas of your life that unless you're willing to make that sacrifice, unless you're willing to go that distance, professional play is just simply not for you. And he's accomplished enough. He's got a new life, like Yiska is saying, and he's doing well in other areas of his life, particularly in streaming. And when streaming is already paying more than what a professional team could pay you, and I wouldn't be surprised if that just extends to professional play in all games, to be fair. Unless you're literally I don't know, one of the top players in a particular game and also winning world championships and getting prize money. Sure, that's different, but it's rare to become an extremely a good streamer. He's in I don't know what is the 0.1 top 0.1% or something of streamers where he's got an incredible audience. If you've got that going for you, I mean, that's something that you can develop. That's your brand. You own that. It's not tied to a team, and you're able to do that on your own time, your own hours, with your own direction, and it's something that you can take with you for a very long time, regardless of what direction Overwatch goes in, or the league goes in, or your team goes in. I mean, his brand and his own career and his own, content creator thing. It's that's all him at the end of the day.
Yeah,
and that's better to invest in. That's better to invest in than to continue playing pro, which, there's definitely a lot of downsides to wanting to be pro.
Yeah, it's not just playing games, guys. I don't know if that has ever been drilled into your heads any more than it needs to. This is another great example of it's just not, you and the pals just logging in on Friday night, just having a couple brews, playing Overwatch. No. This is in many ways life or death. This is your livelihood, your financial security. If you fail, many parts of you fail, and that does something to a person regardless. So this is not comparable. I'm sorry. Trying to apply yourself and be empathetic to this person who's hanging it up for good. And to be fair, retirement these days in traditional sports and esports, let's say it could be a little fluid, maybe. Looking at maybe some recent news coming out from Mr. Brady, and some of the more prolific retirees in the Overwatch scene. Doesn't mean it's forever. Maybe super, some things in his life settle down. He has that itch again to come back and compete. Maybe there's an unretirement in the future. Who's to say, right?
It would be hard to come back, and it would be hard to compete against new rookies
for sure,
who are just insane. But
100%,
it is hard to. I mean, it's not impossible, but it is hard to come back again. I won't rule it out, but I also won't pretend like
we'll count on it.
You can just instantly do it. It would be quite the effort. But sure.
Yes. So he's not going far. It's not. He's not. Vacating and going on hiatus from social media. You'll still have the streams. I'm sure he'll still be around the Overwatch scene. Hell, maybe even the league will probably put him on a desk segment or two, or try to invite him on or incorporate him. That's a big personality.
He did say that he was still going to do quote unquote stuff with the Shock and also the Overwatch League. So he said that on his own stream. So I don't know what that means. Could be a lot of different things. Maybe he shows up to some homestands. Maybe he shows up to do some cool stuff at what is it, the mid-season event or the playoffs? There's live events. There's live events this year. And he's still one of our biggest personalities. And I think it would be smart of Blizzard and Overwatch League to stick by him and see what happens. And he'll also be streaming Overwatch. And here's the other thing about anyone that's like, oh yeah, he just doesn't like Overwatch. It's like, well, guess what? He'll be playing on April the 26th.
Right.
Just saying.
Can I
and
also...
that's not because he has to. I'm sure he wants to. I'm sure he's excited to actually play it as like a fan now, or to do it, actually enjoy it, not have like this looming shadow of like, oh, this is, also work.
Can I also just say, like, I feel in some essence, he actually does rip a pretty big hole in terms of, like, we're talking about the face of Overwatch type of discussion always with him.
Sure.
But it's like, also keep in mind, it's not something that comes to mind easy, the absence of something. But this kid, like, stepped onto the world stage at 17 and hasn't had a single shitstorm. While everyone else, also the one that you are thinking of could be like coming in, most definitely has had, right? Like I recently posted on Twitter, like who's going to be the next face of Overwatch. Every single one that you guys mentioned had some shitstorm at some point, right? Like, and that's also like I know Maurizio, his father is a friend of the show. Like that's also down to like
Which show? This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, his dad.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Super's dad. I actually didn't know that.
He's been the OG. Like, I remember doing interviews with Super when he was on LG Evil and like seeing him like retweet stuff. And I'm like, is that Super's dad?
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, that's sick as fuck. Your dad likes your shit. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so sick.
Dude, it's so hard to like, man, if I think back at when I was 17, like the type of shit, like if that was somehow like being recorded, my God, would I be gone, dude? Like, once again, like, great ambassador of the game, and just also like, just remember what he's done, right? Like, he went on, was it Kimmel?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Kimmel for us, I think twice even. Like, I think he might have done some red carpet stuff, represented us in the streaming world. Like, sorry, it was Fallon, actually. Yeah.
Jimmy Fallon, yeah.
Yeah. And then, like, and then there's really, like, nothing ever negative. I don't think we've ever heard of him, like, be toxic in ranked or anything like that. Like, just, like, a normal dude, while not being, like, you know, this unauthentic, like, Teflon Don type of shit where it's like, he's hiding something. Like he definitely has his, you know, like cheekiness always out there, like being humorous about his frustrations, like in ranked and whatnot. Like that's just an authentic person that, yeah, I don't know, like it's really refreshing to see that someone was already so ready at that age, has grown into this pretty large responsibility and has upheld that torch for so long, hopefully for the future as well. I mean, that it would be the dream, like to get him maybe in an analyst position, even though I wonder like what you would have to pay there. Have him do
a one-time fee, certainly not a permanent position in that case.
Yeah, I half expect like if he just does a co-stream, now no longer being bound by the Overwatch League contract of not being able to stream while Overwatch League's running, that would probably do like great numbers for him. Would probably be watched by a lot of people.
He said he'd just show up on a Vasco stream. Didn't mention anything on mine, but you know I won't take it personally. It's fine. But yeah, I mean, co-streaming still has restrictions because of the whole YouTube thing.
Right.
I believe you would have to, if you want to do an official co-stream, meaning you have the actual footage displayed live, you would have to do that via on YouTube for it to stay within the bounds of the YouTube agreement. So yes, but aside from I mean, I can see him do a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, let's be clear, Shock have done official co-streams. I wouldn't be surprised if he was on one of the Shock official co-streams. For people that don't know what I'm talking about, Emong, I think it was last year, did a bunch of official Shock co-streams on the Shock YouTube channel. So those things exist. I won't comment on how popular they've been, but you know, at least they're being done. You know, it's a work in progress. I respect it.
Yep. Yeah. No, totally possible. Yeah, actually, quite likely.
Oh, for sure.
Let's see. Let's see if that happens.
He's going to be important. He's going to be important for this entire IP moving forward for this.
It's important. It's important that we don't like lose him. You know, like we still want to. We being the Overwatch franchise should really look to still foster him and involve him and have him be a part of the franchise and brand, because it would be a huge loss, and it'd be like, you know, failing to hold on to all the big streamers that eventually became big, having done Overwatch, you know, guys like XQC and Tim the Tamer. Even though I think for XQC, you might argue that like he's a bit of a brand risk, but So maybe he's not the best example, but
Right.
Sure.
Tim for sure. It's like we could have kept him.
Mhm.
We might get him back, but we'll see.
Yep.
That's the big hope with Overwatch 2, but neither here nor there.
Right.
So, in the absence, where is the shock left? What I mean, like, kind of not
Well,
to.
if we want to move on from Super, why don't we talk about his immediate replacement? Because that was
right.
So we're going to go through the roster now, yeah. So there's the immediate I think it was important for us to go over Super because we kind of double up on talking about the Super news and the retirement and the impacts of that, as well as them getting a chance to talk about, well, what does that mean for the shock moving forward, which is the topic we'll get onto now, where there were a lot of questions like, well, who could possibly replace Super? What does this mean? Big shoes to fill, unbelievably big shoes to fill, right? Here's the context for getting a guy like Coluge. You need probably a person from North America because visa-related things. So here's the thing: there's no other tanks on Shock, so you need someone immediately, and you need them to be able to get into the US immediately and get to LA. Getting a Korean player would take time, and you don't have any time because the season will be starting very soon, and visa process can be a while. So unless you purchase another main tank player from another team, or just another tank player, not even main. If you're going to get another tank player from another team, that could be viable. But if you're not doing that, then you better be getting a North American player from somewhere. And one of the best options that was on the table was, from a skill perspective, was Coluge, as someone that I believe had potential to be on a team in the past. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out. There was the Vancouver Titans thing, and it was 2020. In the new Vancouver Titans, they wanted to get Coluge, but they couldn't get him. And something didn't happen. And people, I think someone read was like, oh, the Overwatch League blocked it. And the Overwatch League has now officially come out via report from, I believe it was, can't remember if it was Dexerto or Dot. I always confuse the two, but one of them
Dot.
came out with a report, Dot, and actually said that the Overwatch League did not block Coluge. So who knows?
Yep.
But it's Coluge.
Yes, Coluge is here, and this is somebody who NA hopefuls and fans will never shut up about because he is good. He is a great flex tank player that has come through the halls of teams like American Tornado and quite a number of collegiate teams, I believe, and has looked like a standout. And it's one of those names that has baffled a lot of these casters and analysts and even fans. Like, where is he? How is he not been picked up? What is going on? I smell, fuckery afoot, which only kind of like helped that narrative of like the league doing some, blocking. But obviously we know that's not the case.
Well, so, are you alluding to potentially getting into why he might not have been picked up?
Not necessarily alluding to, but like that's just the narrative in the past around him, is like, he's good. This isn't a good player issue. Like, we've seen him be very good, be very successsuccessful domestically. How is he not being picked up? Like that, like it only draws these people into speculating on some of the worst things you could think of.
Probably an obvious reason, wouldn't it? I think he's got quite a lot of controversy behind him. So
a little bit.
I don't. It's just a tiny amount. I don't think it's like a. I don't think it's a big question at all. I think it was. If there are other players available that don't have any controversy in their background, they're probably slightly more attractive picks. Are they not?
I would imagine so. I think if the league is never like publicly decried or tried to block him, it is interesting to dive into like the details. Obviously, we don't have the details, but it would be interesting to see how many looks he did get and how much that controversy remove some of those opportunities. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't even know what happened at this point, and it's not even worth getting into. But like, I'm going to feign ignorance here. I don't even know what this kid did.
Well, I mean, I'll be real with you. I've never seen a single game Coluge has ever played. Sure. Not even a single one. Which is, again, for anyone that's just like, oh, why doesn't everyone know? It's like, well, NAEU contenders and tier 2 is a bit of a blind spot for me because, look, I covered way too much already. I already covered Overwatch League plus Korea plus Australia plus China. Look, I apologize for not also having NA and EU on top of that. It's just how it is. There's not enough time in my day, and also the time zones are not great. But in regards to controversy, I don't think this is not going to be the episode or the time or the place for us to discuss the morality of the issue. No. But rather, we are going to focus mainly on like, is he a good enough player? What do we know about him as a player? 'Cause he does have a reputation as a skilled player.
Very much so.
And I think it's really up to the teams and up to the league to decide from a moral or ethics standpoint whether they want to have him or not. And you guys, if you're interested in that, you look up the controversy or the drama and you decide where you stand on that.
Yep.
I know there's plenty of players that kind of back him and say that he's made really good positive improvement on a personal level. I can't back that up. Again, I don't know him. I've never spoken to him, never seen his gameplay. I literally don't know him at all. So I it's kind of dangerous to comment too aggressively on someone and something I really just have no idea on.
Yeah.
I think in the same way, I've seen some of his games. He's never, leaped off the page for me, but that's coming from like a very small sample size. And it stands opposed to people who I do trust, who have seen a lot of his games, and they just can't speak highly enough of him. Even, doing some research prior to these team previews, even earlier on in the offseason, a name that constantly came up is like, if he can, if he's available, definitely worth a look. And is somebody that again deserved to at least be on the short list for a lot of these teams. And it looks like, to your point, like these are some big shoes, in a role that we really don't know what is coming for the immediate future and the long-term future of what tanks look like, right? Like I don't know that Blizzard knows what tanks are really supposed to look like. I think it's going to have a lot of.
But I trust Blizzard probably know a little bit more than we do. Hopefully,
yes.
we can only pray they know more than we do. Know what
Agreed. I think just in the long-term picture, like if we had to like gun to head, what role changes the most across like this year and maybe even like the rest of Overwatch 2's like lifespan, I would have to imagine it's probably going to be tank, at least in the short term. As we try to refine the ideas and like the core concepts. I'm sure the devs know more and I'm sure they have a better idea, but I'm willing to, bet that this is the role that changes a lot. So for every tank player, it's going to be a big test.
Any thoughts on Coluge, Yiska, before we move on to other players?
I think like he has a work cut out for him. I wonder if you should double up on the tank role, and if you're San Francisco Shock. The problem is it's getting thin up there, dude. And it's like, you almost need someone with a visa already. Like that is like probably.
It's a time and quality issue, right?
Yes, for sure. So, like, I think like almost everyone will be hard pressed to fulfill like the full tank role. I think there's something you can do with your DPS players where you have them flex onto a couple of those picks and hope they can cover some of it. But other than that, man, like it's going to be a challenge for a lot of them. I think, like, generally speaking, I would trust off-tank players to cover more of everything. But like in terms of the qualities of this player, I'm not too concerned that he's a fit-in for the Shock. I'm also really thrilled to see what 9K will be capable of doing with him. Because, like, 9K is a bit of an off-tank whisperer, historically, right?
Yeah, the off-tank whisperer.
And, like, I think that is something that is interesting to sort of follow, if he can, like, get a couple of more percentages out of there. It's a new game, though, man. Like, it's... Yeah, if I was San Francisco Shock, I would have not even felt secure with Super, to be honest.
Oh,
Super,
for sure.
Super is the guy that had to... Like, is the guy that already had to split the hero pool and had to have Smurf play Winston. Of course, you could argue, like, he could have stepped up, probably not as well as Smurf has played, simply because he had one of the best Winstons in Overwatch history, I would argue. But, like, I think, like, just the strategy of only Super was already on pretty thin ice. Now you get a rookie in that I'm not sure is an upgrade over, like, one of the most accomplished tank players of all time, and who's also your leader. It is interesting. Like, if we're theorizing breaking points of this like ridiculously star-studded rookie roster, that is one of them.
Yep.
And it's not down to Coluge that is the case, but just like the general makeup of this team and that they are lacking a second main tank. But maybe they already have a strategy figured out. I think the more rigid this meta becomes over the season, the more it plays into the hands of the Shock. I think they are a team that is going to excel at focusing on 1-2 meta archetypes, maybe. If we see rapid changes, especially in the tank position, now I see this being a problem. But we'll see.
Right.
So, that brings up an interesting discussion because they don't have a second. They actually haven't had a second tank player this entire offseason. And I saw a very angry Reddit post, which it's pretty normal for Reddit, I suppose, where someone was really upset that Super leaving this late, kind of causes some issues for the availability of who you can get for tank now. But my argument, I responded, I was like, well, actually, to be honest with you, Shock have had the entire time to find a replacement, and they didn't do that. Like, I'm sorry, that's on them. Like, you can't blame Super or whoever else for that. It's just, you've had this whole time to get a replacement, and not only just a replacement with Super, but just like a replacement with Choi, to be honest with you. And that didn't happen. Like, come on. Super leaving is not the issue here. The issue is Shock was never prepared in the first place because they didn't have a second tank in the offseason when everybody else found a second tank, minus a couple of exceptions.
Now, what if Coluge is not actually Super replacement? Theoretically possible.
That's the I mean, with how quickly they had that rollout done, I don't
So
hate it.
He's actually Choi's replacement.
Maybe.
Are they still working on another tank?
Maybe.
Yeah, possible.
Maybe our like tinfoil hat Boston hypothesis is still not out of the window.
It made a lot of sense when I saw him retire. I'm like, oh shit, this is where it is.
I wanted to be so right about that as well. I thought I was the detective, man. I had all of it worked. I was like, this is definitely what it is, and then it wasn't. But still, it's not. Still could be. I mean, maybe
it's possible. I mean, not to jump into speculation, but I think Yiska, I want to put in a pin into something that he said around like the leadership role, right? Like every time Super is brought up from his team, whether it be Krusty, whether it be some of the former players, whether it be active players on the team now, it's always unbreakable mentals, how good he was as a teammate, how vocal of a leader he was, all of like the promotional like social media stuff they put out. It's just him, talking up his team, bigging them up, trying to keep them, mentally in the game. Not having that's a big deal. And I think there may be a somebody that, could fill that gap possibly, but, I'll put a pin in it for later.
Let's talk about the only returning player now that on this team.
Yes.
As this will without a doubt now be like a 2-hour team preview. Violet is now, I guess, de facto team captain. I don't know if he was already. I think Super might have been. He's de facto team captain, I guess. The only returning player from the Shock. With 5 rookies, nonetheless. I put out a tweet that was just like, big pressure on Violet this year to lead a team of 5 rookies. It's a brand new Shock plus this one dude. And in a lot of cases, it's almost like Carpe leading Fusion as the sole returning player, with the caveat that Fury is kind of returning. But when I say returning, I mean like from the previous year, which Fury went to a different team and came back. But Jonak was the same on NOXL for last year. You're the sole returning player. You're the most veteran player here. It's a lot. So how do we see? The other thing about Violet is it's not clear that Shock are going for a third support. So they have 2 flex supports, Finn and Violet. And Violet's the only one of those 2 players that has any experience on main support. So we're at the stage now where not only is Violet that veteran player that needs to be kind of the veteran voice of the team and the leader of the team, but is he going to have to play Lucio again? Because if we get into a traditional main support, flex support meta, which you can't rule that out. In fact, that should be your default position. Your default position shouldn't be double flex support. The default position should be main support, flex support, and be ready for a double flex support. They are ready for a double flex support, but are they ready for the default?
I think there was I'm not sure how much credence we should give to these speculations, but there was someone on Reddit that called Coluge, has leaked something in the past, says that Moth is coming in. I almost hope this is not the case. And I can tell you why. Because
go on.
If Moth actually comes in here, I'm concerned for Finn this year. Like, I want this kid to play. I want this kid to be the flex support for the San Francisco Shock this year. I don't want him to compete with Violet. I want Violet to be on the main supports position. That's
like fully transition.
Yes, and not for Finn to have split time with the best flex support in the league. That is like, at that point, I'm building a shrine for double flex support meta, so we're not seeing wasted potential there. You know? Agreed.
And I don't know that this is a good thing for you or a bad thing, but this kind of like pulls the pin out of the board for me. That was who I was kind of suspecting probably could come back to fill Super's role as like that vocal leader within the team, has experience with some of these players before. It makes sense to me for Moth to come back in and to possibly move Finn into that starting flex support position and let Violet either have time off or just be the flex that he wants to be.
Isn't I always had on good authority that Violet was a leadership play on the team as well.
Yeah.
In the sense that he was, which is why he got a lot of playtime even over FD God when they needed. Because I don't know, you're gonna take this with a grain of salt, everyone, when you listen to this. This is not me like verbatim quoting anyone, but from what I understand, removing Violet from the team removes a lot of the leadership quality on the team. In terms of, when I say from the team, I mean like from the active starting lineup.
Right.
So if you bench Violet, you lose a lot of leadership quality in the team, which is why Violet played so much. Even in main, even when he was easily he was definitely a worse Lucio than FD God, but his intangibles made him more valuable to the team.
Agreed.
There's also different types of leadership, right? There is the guy that has the strategy book like learned by heart, and there's the guy that takes emotional charge of the landscape within comms. Yeah. And that's more what Violet does, or also Super did, right? Like more the emotional leader of that situation. Well, my understanding is that Moth never really was that. He's just like the guy that downloads the strategy that the coach set up and like injects them in palatable bites to the rest of the team. It sort of structures that. I think that's something that can be talked to other people. I think, like, the thing is, okay, I think like other players have stepped to me. It's not a shock thing. It's a like ranked player thing where it's like they have played against Violet and it seems like he's so volatile in what his whims are. Like he will just play DPS if he wants to.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like this is a season where he needs to step up from a maturity point of view, where he needs to lock into one role, mass game that for that, step up as the emotional leader of that team because everyone else around him is a rookie.
Yep.
And like really take charge of the emotional landscape while also giving 100% on whatever role he's put on. Right?
Which might be easy to do with a lot of Korean rookies, maybe. I'm speculating.
Sure. Yes. I think it's so, to kind of counter Yiska's point just slightly, just looking like I try to empathize with the coaches here. When you look at somebody like Violet, who has some starting time on a vast number of roles, who has been at least league average at the very least across them. That's not like a selling point, but the fact that you have that kind of player who is open to that, while I don't know that you can start him perpetually, right? I don't know that he's a starter in everything and he's like this crazy, like a new level of hyperflex that we've never seen before. Like, it is attractive to just look at that and go, okay, cool. You want to play Cassidy? Sick. Like, let's put, you know, I don't know how this works with Kilo or Proper for this instance, because that kid just seemingly can do it all. He's an interesting piece that you have that can kind of be filled in anywhere. Maybe even as a flex tank. God, fuck if I know. Like, if you want somebody to lead the charge and he is that emotional, you know, shot calling type, maybe that's where he goes. Like, is it too far-fetched to say with some of his past, look what Yiska is saying, some of his past on Cassidy, some of his past on main support, no matter where they put him, he seems to at least excel remotely above average. So if you look at Coluge as kind of a last minute replacement, if it doesn't necessarily work out, maybe Violet just slots into tank. I don't fucking know.
Dude, I've joked about this, and I hate that you're making
that
sense.
implausible.
But I've joked about this being like, oh, it wouldn't be funny if Violet just played tank. Like, oh no, like before Coluge was announced, I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? What tank are they gonna get replaced super? It's gonna be Violet. Violet's gonna play tank clearly. And now you're like, now you've willed this thing into potential existence. I'm like, it's actually happening.
I don't think it's that like implausible. Does it make a ton of sense? No, of course not. It doesn't. 100%. And I will admit that on its face. But with the situation that they are in now with Super's absence and Coluge immediately coming in, there are going to be holes there. If this role changes as much as maybe we think, or maybe we don't, I won't speak for everybody, but if it does change and maybe there is a main tank that needs to come in, or maybe there's just a flex tank that Coluge isn't necessarily keen on, or maybe it's it could be Orisa or Doomfist. Fuck if we know, right? And Violet excels at that when compared to Coluge. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw, the end of the May, what is it called? The kickoff clash, right? If we saw Violet maybe
May clash.
Right. If whatever the hell. If we saw Violet as like a starting member on like a control map or two where Doomfist excels, or maybe there's this Orisa meta that, kind of sneaks in and he can kind of pick up that pocket pick for that map in particular and kind of swap to main tank or tank, I guess, in this way. I don't think it's that crazy to think about. Or the more, reasonable and rational option is that they probably just buy another main tank, right? They look at a Marvel like we had kind of already glossed over. I personally think that they missed out on Reiner. I think he fits within this team culture very well. I think he's that was the fit. I was like, if Super goes, Reiner is like, to me, that is super light. That is like your little super that you can plug into this team. Be that aggressive spearhead, be that bumper-esque player. I don't think Gladiators is giving him up. In a way, yeah, it feels like it. I don't think Glads is going to give him up.
Gladiators will not give him up unless they're having problems with him.
Exactly. Which, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but
in which case, would you want to take a problem player if someone else having? I mean, maybe you would. I'm not going to say that teams exactly would it, but it does raise the question. That's getting quite out of it, though. Yeah. So yeah, and going back to, because let's just finish up the support line. I'm like, this really is going to be a 1 hour preview, a 2 hour preview. Is I think Finn is one of the most exciting. Maybe he just is simply the most exciting flex support prospect that we have coming into the league this year. Next to guys like Vigilante and Ultraviolet, Finn I still think is a step above. So super exciting player. Can't wait to see what he can do. And if you did bring Moth back, it probably would be Moth Violet, wouldn't it? I mean, it's what it sounds like it would end up being. So I just don't see Shock benching Violet ever.
No.
Personally.
No. I
don't know if I'm crazy to say that. I just based on what they've done, just feels like it's not Shock. The Shock don't they don't roll like that. Then they do not roll in the sense of not using Violet. They use them. They want to play them all times.
And that's where I look at like Sam, and as much as I'm very ignorant when it comes to NA, a name that is like associated with being good, kind of interesting, maybe as like a project player, but we know how that goes with the Shock. I just see somebody like Violet, like just kind of stepping on those toes. Like if there was ever a chance for Sam to play, I wonder if Violet has also scrimmed in that role and maybe even excels at that, right? Like I question what's up with
what
that.
Is you're like putting him into some mythological status right now. Like, oh, he's the Omega Sigma flex. He literally plays all 40 fucking heroes or whatever it is. Like,
but when we talk about him and like how crusty in this coaching staff, do not want him to leave this roster, right? You look at that last season with a fine tooth comb. They have done heretical stuff to try and keep him in here. He played Cassidy, for God's sake. When would you ever suspect that Violet was going to be a starting DPS player?
But I think they knew that was a mistake because they took him off eventually and just like, you know what, this is probably not what we should be doing.
Agreed.
And
maybe
they kept them on there for a longer period of time. I would be like, yeah, they're just sipping. They're on, as Johnny would say, they're on the goop.
Sure.
So,
But like
I
that's
think
not just the sole case where that happens, right? Like you saw, I'm gonna reference something that you said, and obviously that did happen. But like he moved into main support, right? Like they do not want him to leave. He brings these intangibles.
That's an easier move than going to DPS or tank. I'll say that much.
100%. I like will wave my hands there. 100% agree. But if we're agreeable to those terms and saying, okay, maybe the Cassidy was a mistake, but even just coming to that conclusion, I think says a lot about this guy's character. Moving him to main support, yes, as much as it is an easier, role swap, should say even more about his role. And if we're agreeing to the statement that like his intangibles are too valuable to lose, what do you do with this kid when you have Finn? He could just go anywhere.
Oh.
I know that sounds crazy, but like I wouldn't put it past Cressy at this point.
Oh, it is just so crazy though.
It is. It sounds bonkers. I sound like I'm on drugs. I feel like I'm on drugs saying this.
Molly.
It's past Molly at this point. This is like some black
Ohio
tar
Molly.
garbage from God knows where. But like in some weird
Crusty
fucked
crack
up
pipe.
way, it feels like it. It kind of makes a little bit of sense. I think there's moves in the waiting. Like if I'm going to be completely honest and to reel it back in, I think there's moves in the wings. I think there has to be. What those are, I don't know.
So Shock's roster is maybe not complete. Is what we're getting towards.
No.
Any thoughts on the support line before we move on? Yiska, maybe?
No. Like in terms of supports, like they're pretty set. I think. In terms
Do you think they'll go for? Do you think they will go for a third support? How about that?
I think they
With
might.
The rumor.
I think they might. I don't think they need to.
Okay, but I think we all agree they probably should go for a second tank.
Yes.
If there's one available that fits the bill, which I think is the big one. Is there one that fits the bill? It's just like hard to say, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I don't know.
It's tough. They're in a pickle.
You know what's not a pickle?
DPS line.
The DPS line.
Let's talk about the DPS line. So obviously, I mean, right on the tip of the tongue, you got to talk about proper.
Yeah.
I was going to include Finn and Kilo, but like maybe even just on proper alone, have Shock won the off-season rookie scramble. And they won their own rookie draft. I mean, we're going to do a rookie draft, but have Shock won the rookie draft officially just by snatching up proper first.
If our trial run was anything to go by, I think dead nuts on like the fact that we've a gentleman's agreed to maybe not include proper. You'll have to tune in next week to find out if we did or didn't. And then you have somebody like Kilo who is easily within the top of his role. We talked about Finn just a couple minutes ago on how exciting he is as a prospect. Like 3, AVRL, you maybe can speak to Kilo, but I feel like at least 2 of 3 rookie of the year candidates at the very least, like ballot holders. Maybe they don't win. Maybe Finn doesn't win. Papa. Yeah. Is that too crazy to say that they're at least going to be on the ballot?
For support, like competing with the support. If we're assuming that, like most awards, like MVP and stuff, there's going to be a collection of people from different roles, and you are going to see supports on that, then I think Finn is someone that you'd have to give a shout for in terms of a potential Rookie of the Year candidate for his position.
Sure. Just that alone, like, is there any other team that you can think of off the top of your head that like has 3 potential candidates? Again, just being on the ballot, not winners. I think I think we've been very generous to proper as like the Rookie of the Year, just like dominant vote, at least coming into the offseason. But is there any other team that has 3 like good shouts for like rookie candidacy? Like,
well, most teams most teams don't even have that many rookies. I mean, we looked at a rookie list really recently.
True.
And Shock have the most rookies of any team just to start with. And then beyond that, other teams might only have like 2 rookies or 1 rookie or something like that. Like I think Houston only have 1 rookie.
Who's the Philly main tank again?
Fury.
Fury. Oh, good them. Yeah. They're getting close. They have 2, right?
Yes, their DPS line.
No, they have 3.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What I mean is like 2 MVP like talking points. Rookie of the year talking points. I don't think Fixa makes it in there, to be honest.
No.
Unlikely.
So yeah, no, I think like, but that's the nature of like, you know, getting married to O2 Blast.
Sure. But like to answer the question though, like has Shock won the offseason? I would say yes, and I don't think it's very close.
Okay, that's a different question though. Has Shock
just about rookies, just
yes,
the rookies though.
In
not
terms
the
of
whole
rookies,
offseason.
for sure. In terms of generally, maybe.
Okay.
Put
Put a pin in that maybe, and we'll get to them on that team's preview. Because I am interested to hear that, but I don't want to take away from the time that we give the Shock. But when you look at Proper and you look at how much, you know, how like who he's being compared to at this current point in time, like that's worth its weight. That's a like generational-esque player. On top of that, you have an incredible flex support coming in as a rookie. That's also being compared to some of like the league's top performers. And then you have Kilo, who I'm going to feign ignorance here, but I hear that he's incredibly good at hit scan, to the degree that he's saddled up next to these incredibly good people, has played alongside them for a long time, and is now with them on the Shock. So I don't think that they, you know, play any fools with who they want to team with. And you have Krusty and 9K both as gatekeepers, right? Like this kid has to be good. AVRL, Kilo, are you excited to see him?
Proper
Kilo.
Oh, Kilo.
Yes.
I am. I think Kilo's his peak is unbelievably high.
Okay.
He will forever get compared to Merit because they had to trade time on O2 Blast last season. And what I'll say to that, because I know all the people, all the, you know, there's some of the fans are like, oh yeah, well Merit's better because he looked better in the finals and he got more playing time. Yeah, but it was a Sombra meta, and Merit's got a better Sombra.
Yeah.
But I think Merit is not as good of a raw hit scan than Kilo. Kilo, if it was an Ashe meta, you wouldn't fucking see Merit to be Kilo the whole time.
Right.
It was a Sombra meta though, and that's why Kilo didn't get playtime. Not his hero. It just isn't his hero. You better hope maybe Sam can play it. Proper would probably end up having to play if they, which would be a shame. Well, it depends. Maybe Sombra would be a huge carry hero in Overwatch 2 with her damage changed. I'm not going to get into Sombra though. The point is, yes, I think Kilo is a very exciting player, but he does come in a very limited role where I think hit scans have started to become quite prone to meta complications. And you're getting to the stage where, you know, they're not as valuable as just flex players unless you also have a tracer. And I think Kilo, the problem is he never really got to show any tracer because Proper just gets that role by default and dominates on it. So it's not like anyone else is going to get a chance to play it.
Do you think that, to kind of jump in, do you think that hit scan like bias changes with Overwatch 2 though? One less shield?
It really depends on what heroes are meta and what new heroes come out that define the meta. Like if a new hit scan comes out, that's crazy. That could be it. Or you say there's less shields, but that has a lot of implications, not just on, because the other problem with hit scans is hit scan has traditionally been quite a static role, static role. So you are standing there like a sniping turret. Widowmaker just doesn't move. Ashe just doesn't really move. And you just want to sit there shooting. Even Soldier, sure, you're fast and you flank but you get into a high ground position and you just sit there like a turret.
Yep.
Right. It's a very stationary character, very stationary role. So if it's a fast meta, hit scans don't thrive because they want to slow the game down. Why think about metas that hit scan have been good in? Double shield is one of them. Even though like it sounds like the opposite, right? Like why would that be a hit scan meta? You're just shooting shields, but it's a slow meta when you get to be stationary. And that's strong for hit scan. And as far as double shield being like, okay, sure, you shoot into double shield, that's bad. But you also have two shields protecting you.
Yes.
Like, it both fucks you and helps you in the same way. So I don't know. That's why I think, like, in some ways, I'm a little concerned for hit scan again. Because less shields actually means less protection for hit scan. And if it's a mobile meta, hit scans just get left behind.
Agreed. Yeah. I think there's like maybe Cassidy, right? I don't know who else could be played. I don't know what new heroes.
Yeah, but if he loses his stun, like that's a big deal. I mean,
agreed. Yeah, that's
much
a
of his
good counterpoint.
So much of his value in the kit revolves around the fact that stuns give you very guaranteed shots. Whereas without them, he's just like a lower range Ashe.
Yeah.
You know, like, okay, yeah, he's got 25 more HP, but yeah, he's a lower range Ashe. Like, he's just worse. So what?
True.
Yeah.
A lot of this is going to come down to the details. But that said, is it? And it doesn't. I feel like Shock are kind of leading this, and maybe Philly are in some ways too, where it's like it feels like a lot of teams are just front loaded with their DPS. Like they are the narrative setters. They are like the expectations.
I think the correct thing to do, because 5v5 theoretically is a more DPS heavy game. Do we think? First of all, did Yiska have any thoughts on Kilo before we moved to Sam? Because I was about to move to Sam, but
no, I actually take your call on that. I'll be straight up. Like, I don't think I've watched enough of Kilo to have a good opinion. Yeah, with intent, I would say.
So, but here's the thing: do we speculate on what that starting DPS lineup looks like? We know Proper is going to be there. Let's just clear that up. But is it going to be Kilo or Sam next to him? Right? Because now we get into the discussion of Sam. Okay, he does belong in that kind of NA blind spot for me.
Yeah.
But he also was a top pick for teams that wanted NA DPS. He is a flex DPS player. Covers a lot of the projectile kind of stuff. So in a way, it does compete with Proper. What I see out of this is, and this is where I think Shock can get away with only 3 DPS, better than a lot of teams who would feel like maybe they need to go to 4, is that Proper is flexible enough to play both projectile and hit scan, which is super important. He is an actual hyperflex. I'm not just throwing that term around. He's one of the actual true hyperflexes. That means whatever meta it is, you can either, if it's double hit scan, you play Proper and Kilo, and they both play hit scan. If it's double flex, double projectile, whatever, you play Sam, Proper, it's fine. If it's anything in between, whoever fits the second hero the best will play it. So I think a lot of people, and originally it was like, oh yeah, Kilo is going to permabench Sam, Sam's never going to play. But I'm like, it will be very dependent. Like, I'm not fully convinced hit scans are going to be all that great anymore in Overwatch 2. I'm not fully convinced. So maybe Sam gets a lot more playtime. And again, I haven't seen enough of him to form an opinion on whether he's good or not, but I've only heard good things. I'll say that much.
Yeah, I mean, definitely agreed. Like, I have to echo the same sentiment. I don't know enough about NA contenders, but from the people who I do trust, who have seen it.
This is the APAC broadcast, baby. This is the APAC podcast.
I mean, kind of. For those that have watched him and have kind of followed his career, he is brought up as being a good player coming out of this kind of rookie class, or this rookie graduating class. And I am excited to see him, but I wouldn't bash Reddit too hard, because I'm kind of in that similar camp where it's just like, yeah, I kind of find it hard to see where Sam fits in, but that also I think maybe is a bias for me when it comes to hit scan. But I'm interested to see. I'm willing to give Krusty and 9K more than the benefit of the doubt when it comes to like their planning for the season. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, this kid has his work cut out for him to not be tired, right?
Yeah. I mean,
it's a lot easier to not be tired when there's only 3 DPS and not, was it 4 last year?
Yeah.
So
that's true when none of those other DPS on the 4 DPS squad are proper, right? You are now essentially
you're fighting for one spot.
Fighting for one spot, which is the same position that the DPS player, like that Tai was in last year.
No, but you're not competing against proper, because if it's your meta, and I mean, you are competing against them if there's only room for one of the heroes that you share in a meta. But again, in a situation where it's like, for example, Tracer plus something, Proper is going to be playing the Tracer.
Right.
Kilo's not going to be playing the Tracer. It's going to be Proper, which means if it's Tracer Echo, Sam gets to be a starter, not Kilo. So it's very easy for Sam to be a starter in this lineup. Much easier than when it was for Tayo.
Okay.
Should be. It makes perfect sense that would be the case, especially with regards to what you said about Kilo.
You would have thought that Tayo was a starter in a situation where Genji was required, right?
I mean,
we didn't have you meant 2020.
Yeah,
I was gonna say we never really got a Genji meta, but
Super Genji.
I don't know. Who knows? Who knows?
And we're also granted, we're looking at this through like an Overwatch 1's lens, but we're also coming to an age where maybe teams will just choose not to play like the most dominant composition to fit their team's, strengths. It's certainly possible, right? If it's a little too weird to try and fit somebody in.
More like the metas won't be clear immediately. I think there will have to be a lot of
For sure.
work done to try and quote unquote figure out the meta, especially with a brand new game, new content, new heroes, 5v5, and I'm also expecting that there should be new content
Right.
added every single stage.
Yeah.
So you don't have hero pools, but you do have new heroes being added, presumably every stage, which means
maybe, yeah.
fuck it might as well be hero pools because it's gonna blow the meta up every single stage.
True. In a positive way. But I guess like I don't know. How do we feel about Shock? Because I don't know how to feel about them, to be honest. I want to like them.
I felt great about them previously, but with Super gone, it definitely sours it a bit.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the unknown factor to me. Maybe if like I was more of an NA Andy and I actually had a better idea what Coluge was bringing to the table, I'd be like, oh, it's fine because I am that way about some of the APAC rookies that people don't feel great about it. But I'm people are like, oh no, Fusion's gonna suck, and meanwhile I'm here like, yo, their rookies are good, right? Which is what I would be doing if I knew more about Sam and Coluge.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of where I'm at with Coluge, where I listen to the public and even some of like the analysts and stuff, and like I hear such good things. But I look at the team he's being plugged into. I don't know that they've necessarily, solved a lot of their like inner turmoil, if I'm going to be completely honest. On top of that, like even talking to some of the, other analysts and, tertiary members of the expert community in NA. And there were certain people that they had over Coluge that, maybe signals to me that it's not.
Who would be over Coluge?
I mean, just in particular.
I'm not like saying that's an incorrect thing to say. I'm just curious because I don't know.
One person in particular that, we previously talked about was Reiner, like somebody who I didn't know. I had talked to somebody and they were like, out of the tanks, Reiner is a safer bet to go to the Overwatch League. I think that was the question in particular. I had asked somebody who out of the rookie class who goes, and they had Reiner over Coluge, and I don't know if that is because of his flexibility or maybe something more, but I think that maybe speaks at a little bit more of like this golden boy not being as completely bulletproof as maybe the public would think.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah. Then again, like, let's hope they. I think there's a world where maybe there's someone else in NA contenders, and I think, like, generally speaking, for instance, and this is not like to sort of like go into the other episodes we're going to do too much, but I'm a big fan of like whatever the Valiant have done. If it was actually true that they got Mike Haley in, tried him out, got him out of there as it didn't fit and whatnot. I'd like to see that way more. It sucks for the players, but like at the same time, theoretically, the new contract structure allows for you to be way more flexible with that stuff. And I think like you also got to bring it. And this is kind of like the time where like when the game is completely new, you kind of got to figure your shit out way quicker, and you probably can't do it with the same people.
Yep.
It's probably easier to pick someone up. Now, is the quality in NA contenders there, or are there players on other people's benches that you can then shape into like being good starters of quality that the Shock would require? Very hard question to answer, right? It feels like it's less likely, but I don't know. It's unfortunately also just like a restriction of the COVID era and like the difficulty of having visas come in, and the shittiness of Western contenders support for sure. Certain, like no, structural support really there in terms of like, I mean, who of these kids has seen a coach in his life that isn't just like scheduling scrims at this point, right?
It's tough.
Oh, how many could? I don't think there's a case where all these coaches are just missing out. It's like, how many good coaches are there to start with?
Yeah, it's.
I mean, there's kids in scrims because it's like, I mean, what is their skill set? That's just their skill set.
Yeah, but there's also but nobody, like no place where these guys could actually like get solid experience, right? Like there's, it if you're coming from Korean contenders or Chinese contenders, you probably had a head coach that's paid a salary, right?
Possibly, yeah. It's probably more likely.
For the
not.
teams on orgs, yeah, amateur teams probably not, but yes.
Yeah.
If you're from an org team and if you're from an academy team, then yes.
Yeah, and I mean, who's that in NA now? Like Boston Uprising Academy, like.
Yeah, that's probably pretty much it. I think.
It's tough,
right? Like that in itself has some potential because, like, if you're good enough to make it there without coach assistance, once you get access to like the best minds, like a Smash or whatever, like that theoretically unlocks a different level for you. But like, it also has pretty big question marks if you can fit into that type of environment. And I wouldn't be very surprised if some of the AT members will have some issues over the season, especially those on teams that aren't winning as much. I think it takes a lot of willingness to be able to adapt to a team that isn't winning 95% of their matches, right?
Agreed. I think something that this kind of just dances around is a point that I feel like Sideshow is kind of penned. I could be wrong. That like that teams are going to be like rewarded for being agile in the season, like mid-season pickups, picking up somebody that like is adapting well to this new hero, somebody that's playing well on the ladder that, you know, fits the team or fills a hole that you have, or, you know, the contract structure allows you to be agile. So why wouldn't you be, especially in this new game?
Yeah.
Teams are going to be rewarded for it, whether it's Shock, whom I applaud their coaching staff. I feel like they have some of the brightest minds. I would probably say this is probably the strongest coaching staff that is in the league at this point. I can see them being very agile, similar enough to maybe even, you know, Atlanta, to not to completely jump ahead, but these are going to be teams that you're going to want to be super quick to the button. You want to get these new players in. You're going to want to kind of like add a quick Band-Aid if you need it, right? Because you're allowed to do that now. So I don't see why they wouldn't.
Yeah, it's more required than ever.
Sure.
So where would you guys? I don't know. We just want to get into rankings straight away, but yeah, why not? Like, where would you guys? How do you feel about? Where's your gut check on the Shock? How do you feel about them right now? How do they stack up against either the rest of NA or just the rest of the world? Right now, just not think about like, oh, who could they get? No, just their current team. Just Violet and the 5 rookies. Where do they stand amongst every other team that exists? And you know, that also includes, you know, give that same criteria to the rest of the team. So when we look at NYXL, they only have 5 people as well, for example.
Yes.
So where does Shock compare currently for you guys?
Okay, so
can I
real quick, I think like just so we set like a stick in the ground for our meta conversation, I think like giving hard numbers is probably not what we should do. I'll just give zones here, right?
Give a range. Give me a range. Give me a
like S, A, B, C.
This is
it doesn't have to be that, but whatever you want.
I think this is a top 3 and a top 5 world.
Ooh, okay. You're a little bit more bullish than I am. I kind of wanted to answer the question by asking a question to the panel, right? When you look at NA in particular, I feel like there's only one team that I'm like incredibly confident in, and it's not the Shock. I feel like yes, it's Dallas. I look at Dallas and I'm like, okay, you are. If I had to pick gun to head, Dallas Fuel are the NA leaders coming into this season.
Right.
I look at the Gladiators. You've got holes. You've got a lot of questions. I look at the Shock. You've got holes. You've got a lot of questions. Everybody else feels like a tier below. I put Shock, Gladiators, maybe Atlanta kind of in this A tier for NA, and maybe like top, I'm going to say like anywhere from 1 to maybe even like 6th or 7th in the world. I think there are some incredibly talented teams in APAC. There are some, you know, some absolute monsters. You're also looking at the title defender coming out of APAC as well that you have to put up there within like 1 to 2 at least.
Right.
Yeah.
Shock has some serious questions to answer. They also have some incredible weapons. You look at Proper, you look at Finn, Kilo as well, right? You look at the people who are returning in Violet, right? Those are nobody to fuck around with. But there are some serious holes come mid-season if you don't make adjustments, which I can't imagine that they wouldn't. But if that was to happen, this roster, as it stands right now, does not adapt well.
Avril, give
I
me a
think
range.
Hmm?
Give me a range, Avril. What's your range for
Me?
the show?
Did Joe decide yet? Because he was talking about it still.
Yeah, I've got like an A tier for NA and anywhere from 1 to like 6 or 7 in terms of the world. That range, 1 to 7 in terms of
What's
placing.
A and NA? Is that
Just a general,
what
like
range?
it's a above
range is
average, good. Okay.
The
how many
top
teams are
what?
there?
Top 6, top 7, top 13. What
I'll say top 5. Top 5 and NA.
is that? What is so? That's 2 below what Yiska said. Who do I think are better than Shock currently? Let me work backwards. I
Sure.
think Dallas are better than Shock. Not a hot take.
No.
I think Gladiators roster quality is better than Shock's. But
Okay.
Gladiators have a reputation for potentially not pulling it all together. But then again, Shock have a brand new team is on. They didn't exactly pull it all together last year too, even though
True.
at the end they did.
Yep. Maybe a team like Atlanta.
I feel better about Glads than I do about Shock. I'm gonna say that. I genuinely do. I think
Wow.
Skewed Shoe. I think Skewed Shoe is still above Violet Fin for me. And Funny Astro being in there.
Oh.
Okay.
I have space above Coluge. That's easy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Prop is better than the other DPS, but Kev's is still a fucking monster. Kev's
True.
actually, I'm not even entirely. Look,
I'm with you.
Year.
I'm with you.
Prop will get rookie of the year, but once you start talking about MVP, you got to go up against mofo's like Kevster, and that's
Kev is different as well, dude. Kev is different.
It's like Proper compared to the other rookies is like, yeah, give him the award. But then you go to the MVP levels, like, bro, now you're up against Fletter, Leave, Kevster. You're like, yeah, I don't think Proper's a lock for the MVP. No, I don't. Once you start looking at it from that, it's like, oh, cool, you beat Giovanni. Now here's the Elite Four. It's a very different world.
Yeah, there's some motherfuckers that pair up with Lance pretty well.
Like there's a certain group of players that just like have a magical quality about them, and Kevster is one of them. Like we talked about, like Lib being different. Kevster is also different, man.
I don't know that Proper's better than Kev. I'll say that.
Yeah.
As like probably the biggest voice of Proper this off season, or at least what started now. Reddit's just taken a mind of its own in that regard. But I started us on this Proper journey. I'll be the one to now guide us back on track if possible. As after this episode airs, you'll see that the Reddit narrative now changes to that. Oh yeah, Proper's very good, but he's probably still not as good as Leave. That will be the new Reddit narrative. I think Kev is still probably better than Proper. Legit, I will say that. I'll put that on record. I think Kev is still probably better than Proper. That doesn't mean Proper will be. That doesn't mean that'll stay that way in the entire season. Maybe you get to the end of the season, Proper realizes his potential, and he actually is just the best player in the world. He actually is just fucking Faker of Overwatch. We don't know that yet.
Could be.
But for the time being, as of March. Is it still March? Yeah, it's still March technically for me. About to be April 1st, so I'll my justification is if I'm wrong. I was just joking, guys. April 1st, just April 1st. I was kidding. So that would be my defense. I think Kevster is currently better. Arn's Patapan is the bigger question mark. Kilo has had inconsistency issues as well. Arns is currently having inconsistency issues. So that but Arns has had. We talk about both. Actually, they're pretty similar. Both players have had really high peaks. Arns' peak is untouchable. If we talk about peaks,
sure.
That's a built different kind of guy.
I don't even know if it's fair to compare Patapan and Sam. I think those are both. It's just hard. Patapan is just a complete mystery. He's just a complete mystery. He's a full dice roll. No idea. Hard to compare. So I generally without Super, I think Glad's even with Super, I think it's like maybe Glad's edge it out for me, but without Super, they definitely edge it out for me. So I got Dallas, Glad's easily in that top. I feel great about Atlanta, and I mean we'll see if they can keep up with Proper, but there's a lot of other players. I think Hawk and Gator are better than Coluge as well.
Sure.
Ultraviolet OG could give Violet Finn a run. I mean, I think Finn will be better than Ultraviolet maybe, but the problem is, man, Violet's mechanics on the main support just might be shit. It just might be bad. Yeah, maybe he's a good shot caller, maybe he's a good leader, but if you have to play Lucio and you're going up against like literal Lucio mains who know this character inside and out, you're gonna get body slammed. Like, I'm sorry, you don't have enough hours on Lucio as a flexible player to compete against motherfuckers with thousands of hours on Lucio that can do crazy shit.
And that could be like really leveraged if we're to believe a lot of the shit that's coming out about supports and not being super support friendly, and all this developer talk about, oh yeah, we need to give some loves to supports. Like, it's going to be important to have like some really, really safe supports if this is the game that we're walking into.
I will say at the very best right now, I'm not comfortable with putting Shock any higher than third in NA. That's at the very best in NA that I can do for them. But even then, I'm sooner looking at teams like Atlanta blowing people away. I know the Reddit narrative is that everyone thinks Atlanta's bad for some reason. It doesn't matter what Atlanta does.
That's nuts.
They come second last year. People still make excuses, move the
Right.
goalposts. I'll guarantee you this: if Atlanta somehow beat Shanghai last year and won the entire grand finals, people would still underrate them coming to this year. People would still find an excuse.
Yes.
These motherfuckers could have been the world champions, and people are like, oh, I just don't really believe in Atlanta. Coaching staff, iffy. It's like, shut the fuck up. What does Atlanta need to do to shut you up? Like,
Honest
they
to
could
God.
win everything, and the people would still fucking make up an excuse. Anyway,
At the same time,
I'll
it's
save my-
fair. Like, they kind of got rid of the Rookie of the Year. Or not got rid, but lost.
Sure, but when you look at this, I mean, not to turn this into an Atlanta episode, but like, you look at that franchise's history, like, they've done nothing but like success after success,
Sure.
with like not much on the table, and this team gets like no credit.
Yeah. No, that's very true.
Remember, second place in the Overwatch League, no role stars. That's the meme.
Yeah.
So I
Done so dirty.
think an Atlanta team that really pulls their shit and is, they're within striking distance. They can pull up on the Shock.
Can I give you a hot take,
Proppers-
maybe?
What?
I mean, we haven't seen the full lineup yet, but is New York that far away?
The thing about New York is they are a very, very meta dependent team as it currently stands. So I think in New York's perfect meta, where they get to play all of their favorite heroes, they are one of the best teams in NA, hands down. They are competing with the top.
Yeah.
But one bad patch change for them, they are completely fucked. Like, this is a
Look,
very
guys,
meta pro team.
Guys,
Agreed.
I did this before. I'm just warning you. The New York opium is a dangerous drug. Don't do it.
I'm not even saying, like, I'm just putting forward candidates that could compete with Shock at this point. I don't think New York's that far away from that. I don't think a couple more signings and they could compete.
Let me put it this: my range for Shock is about third, fourth.
Yes.
Is my current range for Shock. Is where I currently put NA. Globally, a little bit further down because you have Chengdu and Shanghai.
Yep.
And even then, fuck it, I'll say it. I'll put Seoul ahead as well. Currently.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got Proper. Now let me introduce you to Prophet. And Stalker and Fitz.
Yes.
I think Prophet, Stalker, and Fitz is a better trio than Proper, Kilo, and Sam. It is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fitz was one of the best hit scans last year. Look, Kilo, good hype. He ain't no Fitz. He's no Fitz. I'll put it that way. Oh, here's another one. Fitz can actually play Sombra. How about that?
True.
Stalker, just way better than Sam. I'll say it. Fuck it. I'll say that. Stalker's goated. He's actually insane. On another team, Stalker would be your starter and a rookie of their candidate on any other team. Just because he might not get playtime on Soul this year, he probably won't get a good shout. So,
yep.
This is one of those like embarrassment of riches moments for Soul Dynasty, where you're like Shanghai and you have Flitter and Lip already, and you're just the third guy there. We're like, well, I guess it's understandable. I don't play. Unlucky. Who knows? Maybe again, it's not foolproof. Like I said, for a guy like Sam, it's possible that your other flex DPS does get game time if it's just really bad for hit scan, or you want a Tracer plus meta, like a Tracer plus something that's not a hit scan. Then Stalker and Prophet will play together. So it's not impossible for him to get game time. So globally, what do we got? That's at least 5 teams. Globally, I put Shock 6th place.
Yeah.
At the top. So you have Chengdu, Shanghai, Seoul, Dallas, Gladiators. I have above Shock globally.
Would we all agree to maybe revisiting Shock closer to the start of the season if there was significant changes made? Like, let's say they add in a main tank and Moth. Like, would that significantly shift that up?
Joe, that would be for a future episode.
Agreed.
For a global rankings and
exactly
power rankings episode. Yeah, it wouldn't be a team preview. Is what that would be. So that's where I stand on them.
Leaving that open.
Here's a hypothetical for you guys. Imagine Choi was still on this team. Where are they now?
Oh, I like that pick.
I
like that pick. People underrate Choi, but he played out his mind in playoffs. He's had some funny moments last season.
He
but
has. Yeah.
When in playoffs, when push comes to shove, Choi was so good in playoffs. Unbelievably good in playoffs last year.
I rewatched their game on Atlanta, and there was a specific like blizzard that he just so casually just turned red 8 and went back right into the fight. And I was like, oh fuck me, man.
But if you
I need a Kleenex. I need a cigarette. Fuck. God, I miss you.
If you rewatch the game where Shock eliminates Chengdu from playoffs entirely, which I would actually say was an upset, just for the record, they did that because Choi and Glystero's Sombra was actually doing mad work, but Choi was so good. He shut down everybody. He shut down Jimmu's Farah. He shut down Leaves Tracer a good amount of time as well. He's just there. He's just on top of both DPSs as one guy and just completely shutting down Chengdu's win conditions. And you see the same Chengdu team versus other teams, and Jimmu, untouchable. Leave, untouchable, and they just destroy you. Shock, Choi's like, I'll handle it. And then he does. So if you're doing that to especially Leave, I'm like, well, Choi's good. Choi's good. What can I say? He really is just good.
Legit, dude. Like if I find like a genie in a bottle and I get 3 wishes, it's like it's infinite money. It's like world peace, and it's Choi comes back to Overwatch, man. Like
this. I think
you didn't say what team, so I'm putting him on Valiant.
There you go.
You fucking monkey paw curling motherfucker.
I think that like wraps together in a weirdly beautiful way on like how we feel about the Shock. That it's just like they're really, really fucking close to being like a title contending team. They just need like one more good piece, and it feels like it's a tank. It feels like you just need like an all-star tank player to like sure up that question. And like this team, you can confidently put up there, but there's just such a
or Violet's currently in the Lucio. He's currently in the Lucio hyperbolic time chamber right now. You know, doing roller skating and like DJing. That's all he's doing inside this hyperbolic time chamber. He comes out and he's just a Lucio god. If he's doing that, then maybe opinions will change.
Sure.
But it's tough to like really give them like the love that I feel like we want to give them. Because I think like we said previous today, like how does this team really come together? I don't see it, if I'm gonna be completely honest.
Yeah.
I think we sound more negative than the actual reality of it, which is they're still a top team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds like oh man, these guys just hate Shock. No, they still are a top team. They are still
100%
within striking distance of championships. They are going up. They're playoffs caliber team.
Agreed.
You're gonna see them. You're gonna see them in all the different playoffs. You're gonna see them in it's not Hawaii this year, but the quote unquote Hawaii equivalents of this year. And they're a team that can compete for the top. I see more potential and more proven evidence in other teams. It doesn't mean I don't think Shock can be a top team. I don't think they'll end the season in like 6th place or something. But right now, that's where they stand for me as it stands. April Fools. April Fools, which I will definitely use as my defense later. Again,
it feels like a repeat of last season, just in terms of feeling. As it stands now, it feels like they're going to be good. They're going to be playoffs bound, like just all the accolades like Avril just said. But like that's the caliber of team that I feel like this is etching out to be. 3rd, 4th place world, strong playoffs performance, but it's not the world beating, title defending. Oh my God, it's Shock and the Titans against the world. I think those days are gone. As it stands right now, I don't see it.
I'll also say, I think another aspect that we actually have to consider is the tag team. Yes, like it's not the trio, but like 9K and Krusty teaming up again should be considered an event here, right?
It is, yeah.
That's, from my understanding, definitely like a pairing that had great like good cop, bad cop type of like splitting. You could argue like, my understanding is that, for instance, Junkbuck had like added like a nice understanding of a wider meta arc, what this team was capable of in season 2 and season 3, where during some of those, like the understanding that Krusty had, that was communicated to me, was a little bit lacking, but Junkpuck made up for that by understanding certain meta conceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think with 9K coming back in, like, I was always a big 9K guy. I think, like, a lot of the initial ability for them to keep up with APAC was a lot down to his work. I will say, like, they definitely underperformed my expectations, but caveated season, like, that was a weird one, given the visa situation. I'm just hyped for whatever they can do when they team up again. Maybe the magic is back, right? Because one thing we will also have to say about Krusty is it wasn't that he was only doing the magic by himself. As we will find out this season as well, when Krusty Magic happened, he also had very strong assistant coaches, as was true about Gunba, and as was true about 9K and Junkbuck. And I think like that's a thing that we should talk about when we get to Mayhem, but Gamba is definitely like an underrated coach there. I think like having someone that adds to his ability is going to be a big one. And it will also be required. I think this roster has implosion potential, my friends.
Mm-hmm.
What, Shock?
Yes.
Very much so.
Implosion. Oh, yeah, okay, I see what you mean. I was like...
As in, like, if this is a team that goes 0-3, now you're in deep shit in terms of, like, team culture.
Damn, you don't have to do Violet that bad. No.
More than one.
I trust not Junkbuck. I do, but not in terms of Shock. I just confused 9K and Krusty. So I was trying to say. I do think it's a great duo reunited. Fantastic stuff. I mean, they've earned that trust. They've 100% earned that trust as well. So,
%.
Cool. I guess that's basically it. Unless we got 2 hours left if we want to keep going. But
no. I think we can call it here.
I think we said it was only going to be half an hour, but of course it goes for an hour and a half anyway.
Yep.
So there it is. That's our. I said it was a short episode. You notice that in the intro, I didn't say, "Oh, you looked at the time. It was only 40 minutes." I didn't commit to a time. I just said you looked at the time. It's shorter than normal, and it still is.
Still is shorter than normal.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 220, which is a Shock preview combined with a super retirement video. I don't know if we're going to go into this level of detail again for every other team.
True. Because
that'll just be like full hour long videos each, but we'll see what happens. Some teams, there'll be less to talk about. Some teams, there'll be more. We'll play it by ear, but you'll want to stay tuned. Again, more coming this week in terms of different content. There's going to be a week where there's going to be more than just one video coming out this week. So stay tuned. Have fun. Thank you so much. We're getting through a lot of content now as the season's about to start. Look forward to it. We'll see you for 221 and more.